Okay, you are live.
We are, okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Business and Economic Development Committee. It's Monday, October 7th. It is 6:17. Members of the committee are Councilor Trimble, Councilor Schaefer, Councilor Leonard, Councilor Fish, who will be joining us on Zoom, and myself, Sue Hawes, is chairing. We do have in attendance other councilors. We have Councilor Dean, Councilor Fournier, Council Chair Pelletier, and we have Director Ann Krieg. So our first item is a letter of support.
Yep, we have a request from a Bangor-based business to pursue a food systems infrastructure program grant. So we wanted to ask your permission to write a letter of support for their grant application.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or further discussion? Seeing none. I guess we have our letter of support.
Great, thank you.
Next item is Central Kitchen.
Yes, we wanted to give a full update on what's been happening with the central kitchen. We once again hired Carolyn Paris of Periscope, who had done the feasibility study a year ago. For you, we asked her to sort of take her work to the next level to, to do more of a management plan. So as we start to, finish the architecturals, looking for funding, we want to sort of get a handle on how this is going to operate. So we asked Carolyn to prepare a plan, which is in your packet in draft form. And Carolyn, if you want to take it away.
Yes, I have a little PowerPoint if I can share my screen.
Yeah, I think we can give you permission to do that. Do you know how to do that? Okay, I do.
I can get Carolyn over.
That's all right. I know
I'm
how to
out
do
from there. You're on.
that. All right.
Yeah.
Hold on one
It'd
second.
probably take me, it would be shorter to have Ann just do it.
Okay, now you can share.
Okay, perfect. See if I can. All right. Well, it's great to be back. As Ann mentioned, we are trying to position Bangor Central Kitchen for federal funding. There are two opportunities in the near term, including a grant to the Northern Border Regional Commission, which is due on October 18th, as well as a grant to the U.S. Economic Development Administration, which can be submitted at any time. As I was working on your Northern Border Regional Commission grant, I was reflecting on all of the all of the ways that Bangor has been proactive in this project, from acquiring the property, performing environmental due diligence, assigning key staff, securing a congressionally directed spending allocation for this project, and then of course doing the engineering and the market feasibility for this project. I've been an economic developer in Maine for over 25 years, and I actually can't think of a single city or town in Maine that has operated their own incubator. And of course, you've been doing that for many years with the Bangor Innovation Center, and hopefully you will add this project to your portfolio. So I'm just going to do a little reminder about who might use this facility. Let's see, during the feasibility study, we did reach out to over 1,000 licensed home kitchens, food trucks, caterers, and other entrepreneurs within I would say a 6-county radius, within a 90-minute radius of Bangor. And what we discovered was that about half of potential users would be within a 30-minute commute, and the other half would travel up to 90 minutes to use this facility. As far as the types of businesses, these are producers of consumer packaged goods, which are shelf-stable, refrigerated, and frozen products, mobile vendors like food carts and food trucks, chefs and caterers, farmers and fishermen who want to add value to their harvest but don't have their own licensed kitchen, restaurants that want to bottle a signature product, but again, don't have the space in their kitchen to do that. And then also we heard from other types of users like educators and nutritionists who'd like to offer cooking classes in the facility. So the next part of this project, as Anne mentioned, is really to look at putting together the due diligence that will make you competitive for funding. And in order to do that, I've again searched far and wide for best practices of commercial kitchens on the management side, including what Fork Food Lab in South Portland is doing, as well as Commonwealth Kitchen in Boston and Union Kitchen down in Washington, D.C. And so the first part of the management plan is really about creating those entry requirements for all of these different types of users. In the category of food safety and financial, those are pretty much pro forma. If you are going to create a food product for sale in Maine, you pretty much have to do those things. And then the management component at the top in the technical requirement, those would be really at your discretion as far as the types of, again, readiness of an entrepreneur to use the facility, and then the types of products that they could produce. Many of these federal programs don't allow for cannabis, so that is the reason for that particular piece in here. And then the last piece are really actions that an entrepreneur would take to demonstrate interest. And so these are, again, sort of negotiated between the manager of the facility and the potential user in terms of, doing the tour, having an interview, completing the application, verifying who they are, signing a lease agreement, and then completing onboarding requirements. So again, I split these between two different types of users: those who would use the kitchen on a regular basis, on a month-to-month basis, for perhaps a set number of hours or an unlimited number of hours, and then a lesser tier of requirements for those who would use the kitchen occasionally, once, or on an hourly basis. The next part of the plan deals with, a little bit more about what the kitchen itself is going to provide. And again, these have sort of been memorialized in the application and also in a draft lease agreement for your review. This particular part deals mostly with the value proposition. Again, affordable kitchen space for startups and scaling businesses, which would include access to a fully licensed permitted space, equipment, supplies, cold and dry storage, sanitation equipment, 24/7 access. And then on the next slide, this is more about the secret sauce of the facility. What an entrepreneur can get out of producing here that's different from a community kitchen or a church kitchen. And those activities or attributes, qualities include being able to produce an environment with startups and experienced users, getting one-on-one technical assistance from the kitchen manager, being introduced to professionals who can help them scale their business, from wholesale buyers, lenders, investors, referrals to those organizations and agencies, again, that can help them scale in the greater Bangor area, perhaps access to a skilled labor pool, a cooperative purchasing program to procure local product, discounted professional services, on-site e-commerce and retail, cooperative marketing, and then curated selling opportunities. These could all be business assistance services that are offered not only by management staff, but by the 30 different partners that we identified in the feasibility study that could provide technical expertise. And then just 2 more slides. This slide is really about what the users can provide you in terms of information that can help to secure state and federal funding, not only for one-time construction, but for operating costs in the future. And so these items, again, this is about setting expectations from the very beginning. And the first part is about who the business entrepreneur is themselves. The second part is really about where they are in the development. Business growth is about how they will scale in the future in terms of jobs created, annual sales, capital. And then the last part is really the toughest to get, which is what happens when they get too big and they leave the facility. Hopefully they will graduate into their own restaurant, production space, or storefront, if not in Bangor, then in the greater Bangor region. And again, capturing that success story in terms of their investment and how they see themselves growing is really important to securing federal funds for the future. And then the last slide is really about, again, thinking about how you will, what structure you're going to create to manage this facility. I understand that you might be looking at the Bangor Innovation Center as that model. Whatever model you choose, you need to think about, again, ownership. I think you've established, I'm guessing that you're going to continue to own the facility. Management, again, could be city staff. You could create a new nonprofit, and that kitchen staff could work for that new entity. You also need to think about what happens with the revenue of the facility. Does it go back into the enterprise? Does it go into the general fund? And then who pays for the capital improvements of the facility? There's often not enough cash flow in this type of facility to pay for a new roof or major infrastructure. The revenue really tends to cover the operations and not those capital improvements. But this is all, again, food for thought as you consider how to create a structural relationship to manage this facility. And that is a quick summary from my end.
Yeah, I have a question. Councilor Pelletier, you had a
Thank
question
you.
or a
I was
comment?
just curious why the slide on demographics didn't include disability.
Oh, certainly that can be added. Absolutely.
Councilor Trumbull?
Yeah, no, I think as we move forward when do we develop like the management plan, how it's gonna be structured, do we develop that? This
Yeah,
group
I mean,
develops that?
we'll be taking this sort of to that next level as we, we're looking for funding right now. Get closer to construction and making some determination, like, does the city handle the management in the beginning and then try to find, you know, somewhat similar to what you have at the Cross. and,
Like, either
Facility,
a
but
board or not.
somebody else is right.
But I also think it needs to be self-sustaining. I don't think long-term we can continue, you know, needs capital improvements. I don't think we continue to fund those. I think there needs to be reserves set aside to, you know, you charge enough for the space to, so it's, I think it's gonna be self-sustaining. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously, we're not gonna charge them the cap to the actual cost of the building. We've got grants for that. We already owned the building, so.
Right.
Counselor Fish?
One of the graphs you had was pretty interesting. I didn't see it in the packet, but you had percentages of like consumer packaged goods, mobile vendors, farmers and fishermen, restaurants, and you kind of had a breakout like consumer packaged goods, 30%. Was that information based on our local demographics, or was that based on other similar kitchens that you had researched? So I was kind of interested, number one, where those demographics kind of came in. And I wondered if you could give me an example of what you might see in those categories for the Bangor market.
Well, that breakout is actually based on the survey that was done for Bangor Central Kitchen.
Okay.
Of the 1,000, again, potential users in a 6-county, 90-minute radius of the
Okay.
facility. So we got back about 100 responses, and about, I would say, 50 of those were potential users. And those are the categories that they broke out into. And so that's pretty typical of most incubators, that type of breakout. Again, a smaller percentage would be farmers and fishermen versus those doing CPG products. That breakout is pretty typical of Fork Food Lab. Right now, they've had over, in the last, well, since 2016, since they opened, about 200 different entrepreneurs cycle in and out. And I would say in the beginning, it was more like a 2/3 packaged consumer packaged goods and fewer of the other types of businesses. But as the facility has grown, that mix has changed. And again, some decide that food production is not for them, and that's good because they've started and they've decided not to continue. But others, again, graduate into the community by investing in real estate and continuing to produce. So that breakout is based on your potential market and not on a set of national demographics.
Great, thank you very much.
Or comments at this point? Okay.
Okay, thank you. And then next, we're gonna hear from our architects. I don't know which Paul is gonna take the helm, but go ahead.
You've got two Pauls. I will start,
Okay.
and then Paul will share the documents. So we have been working on the project. I think last time we spoke, we were looking at schematic design. We have completed the second phase of design, which is design development. So there's been a lot more research into the existing building, the program. We've had our commercial kitchen consultants have been busy at work, and you'll see some of that in a moment. This is the design development review set, which I believe is in your packets. What we've done is we've just pulled some of the plan drawings to talk a little bit about them. Basically this design is based on Carolyn's report and obviously all the discussions we've had with Anne and her team. We're developing this project so that it can be very adaptable, very flexible and scalable. You'll see that a little bit in some of the plans in a moment. So Paul, why don't we go to the first plan? And Paul, why don't you, actually, I'll let you speak about this one.
So this is just our plan based on occupancy loads of the building, just to get a general idea of how, what our capacity would be for this building as it stands, and kind of parcel out different use types for the building. I mean, majority of which will be kitchen space, but also there is a multitude of storage spaces and public side facing spaces that have to be, conjoined with in tandem with these kitchen spaces to make them work well, alongside a pretty robust bathroom to fill the needed plumbing fixture counts for the occupancy load that's present. And I'm not sure, and if you've seen this drawing, it is in the packet as stated. Like I said, we're just talking about some of the specific plans just to point out. But this is with our newest updated kitchen layout from our kitchen consultants. And present is the main kitchen space, which is articulated around a multitude of sub kitchens for a lot of these incubator spaces for small businesses and other people in the subscriber base, alongside some more dedicated side spaces that would be, reserved for people in the system that want space just for themselves, as opposed to the less public facing side kitchen where everybody comes together in those smaller sub kitchens. And that works over towards our public side face, where we have kitchen manager to help manage everything, moving into areas that the people a part of the program can use public spaces to have areas to make up menus, work on their catalog of food that they're planning. And that all flows down into the more public side face where they could show off some of that product. As Carolyn mentioned, the need for packaging and things of that nature to distribute out their own products, alongside possibilities for restaurants using spaces like this, where we wanted something like a pop-up restaurant to show up that could allow people to do tasting menus or things of that nature, and test out their culinary skills and show the public and their possible clientele for the future. And then, of course, you have all your side of the storage for all food and sundries.
Yeah, just to add a few points, the yellow spaces here are those public spaces, the pop-up restaurant. The upper one is where that mentorship opportunities and collaboration spaces occur that Caroline was speaking of. So that's worked in. And I know someone else also asked about disability, and we are accommodating that in the general kitchen as well with some accessible spaces. So if anyone is mobility challenged, there will be some facilities that they can use. Anyone can use them, absolutely. And then one of the things that we've done in the layout here is, and something that we've learned in our experience, is that you have a lot of people who maybe have never been in a commercial kitchen before. You have a lot of people who might be observing or watching. So we've made this kitchen space a little bit larger than normal, so that it allows for people to be there, and that will increase visibility and safety as well. Also, the entire facility is electric, so we're using induction cooking. That's much safer, uses less energy, and if you take the pot off the burner is not hot, nobody gets burned, but it also doesn't generate as much heat into the environment. So therefore, we have less cooling or conditioning of air costs as well. I want to flip to the next.
That building off that, what Paul mentioned with that larger area for the kitchen, this is our life safety plan showing all egress points out of the building, and how that can affect with our new occupancy loads. And you can see how large some of the pathways around the space are. And we really wanted to focus in on that flow of the kitchen. You'll see another plan later where we actually diagrammed a whole desirable kitchen flow for the entire space.
Yeah, I'll go to the next slide.
That's just a general plan as it stands, without the kitchen equipment, just to give credence to what it would look like in a more clear idea.
So I will just speak a little bit. You can stay on this plan, Paul. That's good. In the bottom, the other one's fine. Yep. So in the bottom left, you're seeing the pop-up kitchen and a large, we'll call it a presentation multi-purpose space. There's an operable partition between those. As we've been designing this, we've been discussing and thinking about potential uses for classes on entrepreneurial processes. By combining the spaces, it could be used for a number of larger venues or even rental opportunities. And really, they're large spaces that are connected, so they gain their flexibility, there's a prep kitchen and a sort of service space that's dedicated to that piece as well. So, and that has exterior seating as well as exterior access. So that whole piece is very front facing, very public, allows for anyone who's a member to either present or schedule or rent that space, but also for outside use as well, and another revenue source. And then this is just a breakdown of the spaces based on square footage. Anything in purple is kitchen space, public space in the sort of darker pink. We are also planning in this facility cold storage in addition to the so the freezers and coolers. We have what's called cold banking, so people can rent out space for freezing pallets. There's a loading dock to receive pallets of frozen goods that can be kept here for a period. I know that need has been identified in the area, so that's one piece of this. We've already talked about yellow spaces that are sort of these office and collaboration spaces, and then the bathrooms in the core are the green. There's men's and women's, but there are also some unisex restrooms in the space, as well as locker rooms if anyone wanted to wash up after cooking or take a shower or something. There's facilities for that as well that are unisex but separated, but the shower rooms are individual. And this is our, you want to take this one, Paul? I know you.
Yeah, just to comment that this was the kitchen flow diagram that I had mentioned previously, focusing on how everything kind of bases around that loading dock and how that basically moves and articulates through the entirety of the building, focusing on the more kitchen flow pathway of the orange, supporting and flowing into public / support flow pathway, and how that all kind of works and flows to different exits in accordance with what you need and what works best for the kitchen and what works best for on the public facing side. This was just a general plan to show possibilities of floor finishes that we have, looking on the outlook for the future of the space. And a lot of the times in these kitchen spaces, we'll most likely do a poured floor system, and a lot of those will need an integral cove base system in the floors. So that's what highlighted in this bright pink, to show how all these walls will have a curved up cove base to go alongside with their poured floor for maximum control of any sort of water and dampness in the kitchen and any of these spaces, alongside with what would become LVT or other finishes on the floors for the offices. So to show that differentiation between these two typologies of spaces.
Everything is designed around ease of cleaning as well. Making it easy to clean makes it a cleaner facility. Obviously, hygiene is of utmost importance in a facility like this. So the walls and the integral cove that Paul spoke of are all linked together with the floor. So, for example, in the dish pit, the room can be sprayed down. There's also in the dish pit, we've got a cart in there for the a cart washer. So even the carts that people are storing their goods on can be washed and kept clean. Sanitary conditions are, as I said, really important and something that we've addressed in the design. And then the last drawing here is just a preliminary site plan. We're working on more detailed drawings with our civil and systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, Carpenter Associates out of Old Town. But you can see we're looking at having the ability to have tractor trailer deliveries to the end of the building, as well as having ample parking. So we've worked out some of our turns and the ability to get materials in. What we found is people will start to pool their orders, so you get one delivery a day, but it usually comes on a larger truck. So getting those materials in or out is really very important. The existing loading dock of the building will retain for smaller trucks and smaller deliveries. And because we can use it, it becomes an extra opportunity. You'll see we also have on the exterior some parking for food trucks. Those food trucks will also be able to dump their gray water into the grease trap system for this building that will allow, that will stop any grease-laden wastewater from entering the sewer system. That will all be filtered through the same system as the building. They also have controlled hookups, so they can plug in the evening. So their coolers and their refrigerators and things on their carts will stay operational. I think that was about it for the site, and that was our last slide, was it not?
And then we just
Oh.
had some renders of the kitchen
Yeah.
that we had take just as a general look into what the kitchen could be proposed to look like. So this is with the entire outfitted kitchen as the space that you saw on the plan. I'll just run through a couple of these just so you can see.
There'll be a separate area for baking aside from the other types of cooking. The hoods are meant to be flexible. They are variable speed and volume, so they automatically turn on when they sense heat or smoke or steam or any vapor. So they're again, that makes it easier for people who aren't familiar with a commercial kitchen. If they start cooking, the hood comes on. A lot of safety. We found that these hoods run at about a 30% maximum for most of the time, which, as I said, cuts down on energy usage as well as reconditioning of space. But they're also flexible in that different equipment can be swapped out and as people come into these spaces. These are also, what we like to do is also identify flooring paths and things that we showed you on the flow diagram by shifting the color of the floor, light gray to dark gray. We will do colored areas for safety zones. Sometimes we'll do a red floor at the cooking areas that signifies hot. These are very early in terms of just having modeled all of our equipment for the cooking, but just to be able to look at the space and see the kind of the facilities will have. All the tables are stainless steel and movable. There's power that drops down from the ceiling. The lighting is all high color rendition LED panels. It's food prep and food production, so we want the colors to look good so that the products will look good.
And this is just to look into one of those dedicated spaces. This is its own space, far removed from the spaces you were seeing before that, which was the more public side facing kitchen. This is back to the public side face. And then just some views. This would be their cookware storage and alongside where the kitchen manager would be adjacent to the kitchen itself. And that, I believe that was our last slide.
Yeah, that's it. Well, happy to answer any
Finish that
questions.
Questions, comments on the slides?
Just, it looks great. I'm an induction evangelist, so I especially appreciate that. But I think it looks great, and I assume this is what we send in our grant funding in. Yep. So, yeah, I'd fund it if I were a grant writer.
Yeah, the renderings that you've seen, we've produced since preparing the packet. They took us a little bit of time. So I know we surprised Anne with these tonight as well, but those are available obviously for grants, and we figured they would be good as an early rendition, and we will develop these as we move forward.
Great.
Good, thank you for that.
They do, yeah. Any other comments? Thank you for updating us on what's going on with it. And we look forward to the next phase.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is another project that we've been working on is the pre-approved architectural plans. We've been working with Garin, Turgeon, Dillon Architects down in Scarborough, and they've prepared some draft designs that they're going to review. And I think Devin is here. Hey, Devin.
Hi, Ann. Thank you. So as Ann said, we've developed 6 designs for 6 different apartments prototypes. I will share my screen. Okay, great. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So the first of these that we've designed is an accessory dwelling unit. And the intent was that this could go on to a large lot as a second structure. It would be a one-bedroom, very efficient layout, combined living, dining, and kitchen with laundry and covered porch in the front. Our next design is for that same ADU over a garage. It's oriented so it could be placed at the end of a driveway with the same program on the top floor. We were also just asked to look at designing some 3-bedroom or 3-unit apartment buildings. And this is the first of these. We sort of took our design language based on what we observed around Bangor, looking at some of the designs on the tree streets. This design sort of was looking at that, but could fit in really in any context in Bangor. So this is a 3-unit stacking plan with patios and decks off the back. 2 bedrooms, same plan on all 3 stories. The next one that we developed was another 3-story unit. This would be 2 townhome style units, 2 stories with living room, kitchen on the first floor of the townhouse, and the second floor would be bedrooms. The first floor of the building would be an accessible unit, so at grade for grade level entry. And then 2 more. This is a 4-unit designed to looking at some of the capes around Bangor. There's a lot of capes, so trying to make it that so it would fit into that context. These are very efficiently laid out. These are about 750 square feet each, 2-bedroom units, all the same layout. And then our final design is for a 4-unit building. This would probably, these are like 1,000 square feet for each of these units. So this is a little bit bigger. It would probably fit into less of an infill context and more of an undeveloped lot that this could fit in. And I would open it up to your comments and questions.
Is the first ADU, is that one designed to be fully accessible?
Yes, that is
Okay.
designed. It's a slab on grade. It could be built as over a crawl space if somebody wanted to do that, but it is fully accessible.
Does it have like the 36-inch doors though and things like that?
Yes, and clearances on doors.
That was one of my concerns, because I think there is a need for that for senior housing that isn't necessarily senior housing for low-income folks. And then the other question I had is, have these been seen by any of our local developers, or were they involved in any of this, or is this sort of? No, this is the first time. In terms of process, this will also be going to the Historic Preservation Commission and livable communities. And yeah, I'd be happy to send it. That's a good idea, to send it to some area developers. And even if it's, the other thing too, is I think of the plots that we have that need a house, if it could be even identified like, hey, this could actually fit on these lots, or this could be built, maybe nudging it along to one, and whether or not that's now or whether it's when these are finalized, but to even say these fit on these lots might make it more appealing to developers. But
Other comments?
Do you have
Councilor Pilcher.
any sense at all of what the construction cost of these would be?
We have not gone through that exercise yet.
Be interested to know.
we can get some cost per square foot type of.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Any other comments? Questions?
My comments are likewise. It would be interesting to see what the local developers think of these plans, if they have any suggestions or advice, and maybe they could also contribute to the price per square foot or what a potential price would be. I know that would fluctuate because it'll all depend. The price today may not be the price in 6 months or a year, but at least it would give us a base.
And be able to compare against these designs, at least against each other.
Okay,
Don't see anything.
great.
Is there a potential, sorry, one last question, for any of these designs to be used in the Grandview?
They could be, you know, as we go through that process, you know, working with developers, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point, is so that, you know, these are available to developers so that they don't, to reduce those costs of preparing plans.
Thank you.
Are these plans in a packet we've received yet? Or do we have these plans, we counselors? I didn't see them in my packet.
There's a
Uh,
link, because they were so big, so if you click on the link in your
Oh,
packet, it will.
okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
massive,
Mhm.
right? Okay,
I
All right.
think so.
thank you, Devin.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you very much.
All right, so next on the agenda is from our planning staff, the land use plan implementation process. Anya Colette's here.
So this is just an update about our planned engagement efforts for our land use code update and our consolidated plan that community development is working on. Because we just kicked off our land use code update process, we had a kickoff meeting with our consultants a few weeks ago. And so we're beginning just the first stage of that process, and then the consolidated plan is also happening. There's an overlap. And we wanted to coordinate our public engagement efforts so we don't, exhaust people with different meetings and things. So our plan is in November, throughout November, and then into early December, we'll be having neighborhood meetings throughout the city. And we'll be introducing people to the land use code update process and get their thoughts on our current code. And then also get their thoughts on priorities specific to the consolidated plan process. And then a third aspect of it will be getting their feedback on complete streets principles, complete neighborhoods, introducing them to that concept. That was a key part of the climate plan toolkit. So something we want to start introducing people to. So we will be pushing out information soon on those neighborhood meetings. There will also be a remote option at the Livable Communities meeting in November. And so we'll be pushing that out soon. We'll be at the polls on November 5th, telling people about it. And then also in November, we'll be meeting with you all and then other committees and commissions about the land use code to get their feedback. And then our consultants will also be having many stakeholder meetings with various groups, including different realtors, local landlords, developers, and other interest groups as well. And so just timeline wise, after we do all of those public engagement events, our land use code consultants will take all of that along with our current code and be drafting a technical review report, which is basically an audit of our code that will come out next year. And then based on that and the engagement feedback on that, we'll be coming up with some drafts of the land development code. The consolidated plan is a shorter timeline. I don't have the specifics on that since Robin will be managing that, but that should be coming out early next year. And I think that was pretty much everything. So happy to take questions.
Any questions?
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. All right, next on the agenda is permission to pursue a grant from HUD for the pro-housing application, and our community development officer is here.
Hello.
Robin.
Well, thank you. So the Pro Housing Grant is actually a really great opportunity. I was really excited to see that they were reissuing this grant because the city of Bangor really does CDBG well, but we know that we could do so much more related to housing, and it just becomes rather limiting that we have a small yearly entitlement and just so much housing need. So HUD recently released this pro-housing opportunity, and it's designed to ameliorate specific barriers to affordable housing production and preservation. So the way that I think about it is it's CDBG only for housing and sort of like the unplugged version. So there's less restrictions on it, which is really great. And I think that we've put together for you to review a proposal that kind of looks a little bit at planning for housing, developing housing, and then redeveloping housing. And so I get into it a little bit in our memo, looking here, and, you know, in deep conversations with our residents on, you know, different housing priorities, we see that there's a number of opportunities that we can really look at, specific priorities related to, how do we make those investment decisions so that we equitably distribute, housing benefits sort of overall. So in our planning category, we'd really like to look at, doing something that technically the city is going to be required to do in the next year or two, which is to create an equity plan so we can get ahead of those things and to think about how we might think of incentivizing and prioritizing development, whether we're looking at the types of housing that is in all quadrants of the city, what types of development are near schools, what types of development are handicap accessible, you know, all of those different types of things to think about, plan more thoughtfully with regard to development. So that's one piece I think that makes this proposal look really kind of a holistic view about housing. We also want to continue the effort by the planning department to look at the land use code and to look at other opportunities in zoning to say, you know, how might we really expand on opportunities for development, such as with ADUs and pre-approved plans. In our production category, we've really seen that the biggest barrier to housing production is in our ability to sustain the development with our aging infrastructure. So things like, you know, stormwater and sewer really become impacted when we're trying to create denser housing, but then also trying to put housing developments in areas that we're just not able to kind of like incentivize the development. And so it becomes kind of a numbers game that ultimately is a wash, and developers really can't kind of make that happen. So our solution for this, without being able to identify one specific project at this time, is to establish what many other communities do and to just establish a trust or a fund that can be used to develop different projects related to affordable housing according to a formula that we would, you know, create certain criteria with the idea that these funds would be used to, you know, further the types of units that are affordable and kind of correspond back to that equitable development strategy. One other thing that we came up with is to explore workforce development opportunities related to housing production, and in two different ways. Number one, that we do have a workforce shortage related to trades, to construction workers that really impede development. And number two, on supply side of housing production, just the sheer number of units that we need, according to, you know, recent estimates from a housing production study, just to be able to build that many units in a short order is really, it's quite a task. So one thing that we really could consider exploring is off-site manufacturing, which are, you know, the modular housing facilities. And if you were to go today to one of the the larger names of these housing companies locally, they're actually getting their modular components from somewhere in Virginia or Pennsylvania. And what happens is you have transportation costs, you have supply side costs that can oftentimes inflate the cost of housing, you know, where setting that more locally could really be a benefit, which also can correspond back to our workforce development initiative of, you know, potentially is there a pathway for folks to have good jobs and really good training and also kind of address our housing at the same time. And then also this grant could continue to support the position of a housing officer that we've paid for with ARPA dollars. We could extend them for another length of time and be able to answer the question of, you know, what could we fund in that development category. And then in preservation, we've engaged a lot of residents most impacted by housing affordability. And we know that preserving homeowner opportunities is really important. So this really expands on what CDBG does really, really well. And if I might say that, you know, speaking to HUD in HUD's own language, I think is one of those really successful things that they've designed these programs over a number of years. So we wouldn't have to necessarily argue the point that that's effective because they've created the programs. But neighborhood revitalization and stabilization programs really look at what are our existing buildings. And this is what I dub our lost housing, because we know that we need more housing, but we need to build some, but we do lose a lot of housing due to vacancy, dilapidation, you know, and other like demolition and things like that. We really need to look at how many units we're actually losing through some of these things. And we also know that we have the oldest housing stock in the country, so that's really unique to our area. And we can address that through a lot more rehabilitation, addressing lead, mold, radon, other types of contaminants. And then also thinking about the, you know, the Northeast and our climate impacts. We have, you know, colder winters and hotter summers, and we really are starting to look at each of us into dwelling units and our heating and cooling systems. So that's another opportunity there. So in preserving through redevelopment, ramping up production in development, and then planning for a really great strategy, we would be asking HUD for approximately $7 million. They can decide that maybe we shouldn't have that much, but I think that we make a really great case of need, certainly. And in my review of the successful awards in the first round, each of those municipalities that received an award addressed something in each of those three categories. And I may have, you know, taken a few suggestions along the way of some really great ideas that have been implemented or that were included in those applications. But I really could see them fitting well here in our community. So does anyone have any questions?
Schaefer?
First of all, I would move staff recommendation to pursue this grant, obviously, but I love the idea of the workforce and modular housing being, you know, a lot of them come from Canada too. And they're built undercover. They don't deal with snow and rain and ice and all of that. But can we get the ADUs we just saw 5 minutes ago built as part of a workforce? So not only do we provide you the plans, but also we can build them locally, drop them off, erect an ADU quickly and rapidly. Wouldn't that be, I don't know, that's my vision.
You're there.
I think it would be amazing to have that work with UTC, work with the MCC, work with the trade schools and the unions and all of that. We can have a real cool model for filling in some of that infill development. So anyway, I support the motion.
I love
So we do have a motion. It has been seconded.
Maybe part of that includes 3D printing some of the components or all of them.
Sure.
Too.
Work with the university.
Yep.
Yep. An induction stuff.
Is there any other discussion on this?
I just would like to add something. I think this is great. And you know, the 1900 home shortage, I think that part of that equation is affordable. A lot of the people, especially the greater Bangor area, people that are coming in, they really, you know, we have buyers every day. We can't find property for houses for, even though there's a lot of houses on the market. So anything under 300 today, God knows what that's going to be in 6 months or a year, but the key factor of the 1900, I bet the majority of that is, you know, people that just can't afford the bigger ticket housing. There's a lot, I think the inventory for properties that are on the higher end, I think we meet that inventory according to the people that earn that income bracket, you know, percentage wise. So I think this is going to be an ongoing challenge. I believe it's 1900, maybe even more, just affordability for the average person in today's market. So thank you. That's exciting.
Thank you, Councilor Fish. I appreciate that comment. One of the things that I tried to insert in here is really looking at what HUD does well, and specifically with the neighborhood stabilization program, which is specifically trying to take some of our units that need to come back online and making those into home ownership opportunities for people to buy within that price point that you were talking about.
Thank you.
We do need to submit this before the next council meeting. So if you move this for passage, we would like to put this on the consent agenda for the 16th. Submitting it the midnight before.
Probably put it under new business. I think it's
Or-
important that you all should
Yeah.
highlight.
Okay.
Yeah.
However.
New
that would
business
work.
would make sense.
That's good.
Okay, no objection. Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Robin.
All right.
You need to move it.
Yep.
I move to go into executive session under 1 MRSA 456C, disposition of real property or economic development. One item update.
Second,
We're moved and seconded, roll call vote. So.
Yes.
Councilor Schaefer. Yes. Councilor Dean.
yes.
Councilor Dean. Councilor Leonard.
Yes.
Councilor Fish.
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Right.